Beaufort County Board of Education special called board meeting of November 13, 2023. This meeting is being conducted in person at the district office in Beaufort and is also being conducted via hybrid video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed on the school board's YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/at Beaufort County School Board. We don't have anybody in person from the public attending tonight's meeting. So our first order of business is to have a motion to approve the agenda. Colonel Geyer made the motion and Mr. Dallas seconded the motion. There being no hands up, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And then those of you online, thank you. Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. And anybody else online? I think that covered everybody. Okay. So that's 8. Okay. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please be seated. The media was properly notified. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is for the board to discuss any potential modifications to the superintendent evaluation instrument that we've been using for several years now. However, the instrument has been modified and tweaked each year since its inception, which was a few years ago. And the main reason really was the pandemic changed parameters on the evaluation instrument. So approximately 2 weeks ago, the board directed the results committee to meet, which they did last week, and I attended, and to come forward to the board with recommendations for the evaluation instrument that we will use next fall. So this will be based on the 2023-2024 school year. And the board can approve changes as it feels appropriate. And Dr. Rodriguez also has to be in agreement with those changes since we are evaluating him with the instrument. So I'm going to turn the discussion over to the chair of the results committee, Ingrid Boatwright, who is participating online. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, thank you so much. Calling it the instrument sort of gives it kind of a creepy medieval feeling. But yes, what you see in front of you is the instrument that we have been using. And we've had multiple discussions about this. And so I thought I would just kind of recap some of the discussions and then bring forward 2 motions from the results committee, specifically for the 2023-2024 school year. So first of all, there are really 3 components of this evaluation. And let me explain that a little bit. There is sort of the standards by which we evaluate the superintendent. And those are in purple there on the side. Policy involvement, goal development. These are they're tied to the professional standards for educational leaders. I would also say that we have standards under the measurable components, the standard of improving academic achievement, increasing teacher retention, recruitment, and financial oversight. So those are kind of the standards section. And then we have a scale, how we evaluate his performance in each of those standards. In the professional practice section, it is based sort of on a general assessment. There's not a numerical category. But there is, under the 3 measurable components section, a measurable component of each of those. There's some sort of measurable goal was the idea. So that's kind of the scale. It's on a scale of 1 to 4, ineffective being 1 point and highly effective being 4 points. So another part of this evaluation, I guess, is a way to say how we determine if he is ineffective or highly effective based on that standard is another component of the instrument. And then finally, we have how we weight the different aspects of the application of the instrument. So there's 75, there's like, you can weigh the professional practice. I think in our most recent evaluation, we rated that at 45%. We rated academic achievement at 25%. And I can't remember the other numbers off the top of my head. So those are kind of like the three areas where the results committee could potentially look at rearranging or modifying or otherwise changing the instrument. We did have a brief discussion on whether or not we wanted to propose any changes to the standards, and there was not any real appetite for that in the committee. So we are not proposing anything along those lines. I will say, though, just as a side note, the professional standards for educational leaders has been revised since this instrument was devised, and there's also the American Association for School Administrators standards that I think bear looking at. So that's kind of a comment for future evaluation instruments. Then there is the weighting, and we do have a motion coming forward about how we'd like to tweak the weighting for the 2023, or at least how we would propose tweaking the 2023-2024 weighting for the different sections. And then we also have a motion coming forward about the scale, particularly in relation to the teacher recruitment and retention. So if it's appropriate now, Madam Chair, I will take questions or I can propose the motions.
Why don't you go ahead and propose the first motion?
Okay. Robin, do you have the first motion ready? I can look it up. So the first motion I'll bring forward is that we are proposing a change. And Robin, you have the language, right? Just in a nutshell, we're proposing a change to the weighting where we're going to give a higher weighting than in the 2022-23 evaluation to the professional practice, although it is still lower than the 2021-2022 rating scale. All right. Is the motion up? I can't see it. I can read it directly, but that essentially we're proposing that the professional, there it is. No, that's not it. That the professional practice section, which encompasses 6 different areas, be weighted at 75% of his total evaluation. We would then propose that 10% of the weighting be on academic achievement, because we felt that was also really well captured in the instructional leadership aspect of professional practice. 5% for teacher recruitment and retention, and then additional 10% for fiscal oversight. So that is the motion being brought forward. Do you want me to read it, or can you see it up there?
We can see it, and we also that are in the room actually have it printed on the agenda too.
So that's the motion that we're bringing forward.
Okay.
The first.
So do we have a second? Okay, so Chloe, second your motion, Ingrid. So now let's get into discussion. Do you want to make any further comments, Ms. Boatwright?
No, I think, but if I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about what was discussed in results committee if there's further clarification needed.
Mr. Dallas?
Thank you, Ms. Boatwright.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Thank you, Ms. Boatwright and the Ad Hoc Results Committee for all the work and effort you put into this. I have concerns about it in the sense that the area that is 3/4 of the performance are activities. And I've not heard any type of empirical evidence that those activities correlate to improve student scores. And what I'm more accustomed to is a large organization with a $300 million budget is going to target what results does society expect that organization to deliver. I don't think they really expect us as a primary output to be concerned about professional standards. I think that's an internal metric, but I do think they are very, and increasingly so, cognizant of SC Ready scores and the South Carolina scorecards. And I can see where by having 75% based on an internal metric that the citizens and society know very little about, I can see where they start asking us if we are delivering on the reason you create a school district. And I can see where it could cause some gaps and credibility for the school district, which I want to applaud all the segments of the school district for all the efforts they've expended in the 11 months that I've been a member of it. Because I think the rating actually captured and gave accolades for the outcomes. But I think we are running the risk of basically separating ourselves from what the society actually expects. So I just want to register those concerns.
Colonel Geyer.
I agree with your concerns, but I have a problem with measuring superintendent's effectiveness, especially in total student achievement, because of the areas out of his control. And I'm speaking specifically about something that Mr. Campbell mentions all the time, and that is the culture of the family and the culture of, let's say, low performance. This achievement gap that we have didn't happen overnight. It is a function of generations of not having universal achievement at a standard rate, regardless of race, regardless of demographics. And this is something that we should not accept, but it's also something that's going to take time to correct. It's going to take outreach, and it's going to take a more community involvement that obviously a superintendent can lead, but you can take a horse to water, but you can't always make them drink. And to try to figure out what is the right amount of progress that the superintendent, by the superintendent's actions, how much of that progress depends on him. One of the problems in this district, Mr. Campbell, I think will share this, is we've had too many superintendents and we've had too many programs, and we start over and over again. We haven't had a long-term consistent program. And that, in my belief, in my opinion, is what it's going to take to fix this achievement gap. It's going to take a generation. So to me, when you want to evaluate a superintendent now, it's progress. Are you making progress? And so I should see progress in each of the demographics. But what's the right amount of progress? I don't know that. And what I believe we should say to our educators that are the experts in this field is, you tell us, Mr. Superintendent, what you believe you're going to achieve in this rating period. And tell us. And we want to know, you have to tell us, and we have to agree with what you tell us. But tell us, I want to see 10% improvement in this group. I want to see 20% in this group. They're the ones they're the experts in this. I'm not. But hold his or her feet to the fire for what he says he's going to accomplish, and then evaluate him at the end of the year. Did you accomplish what you said you were going to accomplish this year? If we try to say, we're not going to give you a 5 or a 4 unless you eliminate the achievement gap, that's unrealistic. Not going to happen in a year. But what can happen? But I also agree with you that it seems to me that only giving that 10% or whatever it is doesn't seem to be enough. I don't know what it is, but I would think, to me, I would think it's more than a 20 and 30%. Because that's what we're here for. That's what we've got to do. So that's just stream of consciousness.
So I like both of your comments very much and agree with both of you, Mr. Dallas and Colonel Geyer. I think it's important to know that as our role as the board overseeing the superintendent, that we are making reasonable progress towards certain goals. And I think that is really what this professional practice section is the reasonable progress. And I want the public to know that there are 5 categories here, and instructional leadership carries the most weight, 30%. So that is tied to student achievement. You obviously need instructional leadership to move towards higher student achievement. So that was, I guess, my thinking was to leave these categories under the professional practice rating the way they have been in terms of the individual weighting of governance and board relations is 20%, community relations 15%, staff relations 15%, business and finance 20%, and instructional leadership 30%. And those add obviously up to 100%, but that entire score, the final score that the superintendent receives, these professional practice ratings would comprise 3/4 of his score. And then those measurable components would be the other quarter. As we mentioned, student achievement would be 10%, the teacher recruitment and retention would be 5%, and then the financial oversight is 10% again. And to point out, we've got financial business and finances is also included in the professional practice rating. So I think we're already more than a quarter into this year, and Dr. Rodriguez is going to have to he's going to be evaluated based on what we decide about this instrument, and I think the sooner we do it, the better. Little tweaking of the I'm fine with that, and if we want to tweak the percentages a little differently or whatever. And the other thing that definitely came out in the results committee meeting was under the teacher recruitment and retention. Well, I won't speak to that yet because that's actually in the second motion. Excuse me that I even said that. Okay. So Ingrid.
Yes, I just wanted to go ahead and respond based on the conversations we had in the results committee. And I think hopefully you guys had an opportunity to look at the teacher recruitment and retention task force that was part of Proviso 1.1140. The chair of that recruitment retention task force is a Beaufort County resident and has been talking about the outcome of this. And one of the things that came out, one of the problems they have, and it's uniquely in South Carolina as opposed to other southern states, is our SC Ready and our report cards are very flawed instruments. And if you read this whole thing, it's rather dense. But just as a summary, they say that it's disconnected, that the way they're used is not really is not being done well. The data that's being collected, the data that's yields, is not really being used. It's not really useful for informing instructional practice. And as we know, we don't even use it to evaluate teachers or building level instruction. It is considered moderately ineffective, and they are actually making a big push out of this task force and with other state level folks, operatives, leaders, to move away from this system and come up with a better system. And they want to realign and revision the standards. So that's all kind of going on in the background. So that was part of the thought process for me was, If at the state level, they're saying this is not a good way to assess anybody, and it's leading to an outflow of talented educators. And I can't remember the statistic that was particularly striking to me. Let me see if I can find it here. In 2013 to 2020, teacher preparations programs, the number of people applying to and attending those in the state declined by 23%. In 2019 to 2020, the turnover rate for teachers with fewer than 5 years in the state of South Carolina was 45%. And that is significantly higher than the average turnover rate of 10% in what they call the Southern Regional Education Board states. So South Carolina has a 45% turnover rating, and the Southern Regional Education Board states, so those are kind of the states that border us, are at 10%. That's a huge red flag for the state of South Carolina. And they tie a lot of that to how we gather the data that we gather and how we use it to evaluate schools. So I would say that, yes, I agree that we want clearly Dr. Rodriguez's primary goal should be improving academic achievement. I think that that is well captured in the professional practice. I think leaving the academic achievement piece in there, but reducing it to, sorry, did someone say something? I heard an echo. Okay, reducing that to 10%, given the fact that the state is currently evaluating the system as being deeply flawed and causing turnover, would be a good move on our part. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Just to understand this, so you're saying in terms of the achievement gap that we would measurable that less than what we're measuring it at right now at this time. Is that what you're asking for?
Sorry, I broke up a little bit, but are you asking about the academic achievement part of the measurable components?
Right. When you said measure 5%, are you saying you want to go less in terms of measurement of that?
No,
Is
it
that
was
what you're
25% in the most recent evaluation, the academic achievement piece, and we want to bring it down to 10% and weigh more heavily the professional practice, which does encompass the largest part of which is the instructional leadership.
And when you what does that look like when you say when you said instructional leadership? What is that? What does that look like?
So it's section E of the professional practice of the evaluation tool, which is what we used just a few weeks ago. And there are 10 areas where we evaluate him. And Robin, I don't have it right up in front of me, so if you wouldn't mind popping up there a little bit. But they're the areas where someone who is in charge of leading rather than administering the instructional aspect of the school district would be held accountable. And that again goes to the professional standards for educational leaders. So yeah, so for example, building level leadership, performance evaluation system. I remember when I first came on the board, we had never had a performance evaluation system internally that was for teachers and for school building leadership. And Dr. Rodriguez put that in place with the Performance Matters, which has yielded some much better, more local data. Staff development, that goes to, what kind of professional development programs we have, school improvement, curriculum instruction, student feedback, which I think is a huge part of the academic achievement piece, and support for students. How do we support, the multi-tiered systems of support? So those are the criteria that, according to the professional standards for educational leaders, should be used in evaluating a superintendent. We did not take off the academic achievement piece because we still want to be, keeping laser focused on that and looking at those numbers. We just weighed it less than it was going into this last evaluation we just completed. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, and that right there is what definitely concerned me because in terms of the achievement gap and weighing in on the student achievement, I think that is one of our number one goals as a board. So I would hate to see us to go down less on that, less in that area when that is one of the driving forces of us being here and making sure that our students are successful, because when you look at what goes on in the county and this district, the achievement gap is what drives the community in the direction that it goes. So I think that would definitely need to definitely be upholded and not less than, to take down any less than what we possibly currently have it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, just to respond to that real quick. I don't disagree, Mr. Smith. I think that part of the problem, though, is that the way we are looking at it, the way we gather that information currently that comes down from the state, what we call like metrics or measurable or numeric evaluation tools, it's a problematic, process right now. And even compared to other states next to us, and they actually tie it into a higher teacher turnover rate. So I think that that's why let's weigh it down a little bit. Let's focus. Let's make sure we're paying attention to the instructional leadership, and let's not eliminate it, but let's maybe make it not as impactful on the total evaluation, while the state at the state level is going through a realignment with the way they do this. Because they're basically saying, hey, this is our method of collecting, evaluating, analyzing, and bringing forward data on the school district. They call it a report card. I think that was part of the federal law, but they're saying ours isn't very good and it's causing problems. So we can continue to weigh it at 25%, but I think we do run the risk of essentially putting a lot of emphasis on what is probably going to increasingly be revealed to be a deeply flawed methodology. And I think we capture his instructional leadership really well in the largest portion of the professional practice.
In terms of, can you give me an example? Just,
Example of what?
you said we catch a large proportion.
Yeah, because we evaluate him based on what's recommended for evaluation of superintendents at the national level with the professional standards for educational leaders. And those are criteria that they say every superintendent or school leader should be evaluated on. And we do that. That's the largest percentage of his professional practice, which we are going to be increasing its weight, right? We're not taking away the weight from academic achievement and throwing it into, some other section. That is still going to be a big part of his evaluation. We're just looking at the numbers that are coming down at like the state level and saying, let's de-emphasize those a little bit. Let's see what the state can come up with as they go through this realignment process. And let's really add weight to those professional standards for educational leaders.
Well, to piggyback a little bit off of what you said, Ingrid, too. So we're increasing the weight, the total composite weight of those professional practice components. So if you do instructional leadership, which is 30% of those professional practice components, and multiply it by 0.75 because it has higher weighting now, that comes out to be 22.5%. So 22.5% of his evaluation is just the instructional leadership component. Plus, then you add the 10% of student achievement. So basically, a third of this evaluation instrument is specifically tied to student achievement. Go ahead.
Excellent, Matt.
Yeah, I guess my quandary is I don't see any correlation between that and what you just named and the scores. So to me, it's like sales group comes to me and say, Carlton, I made 100 calls. But if you haven't sold product, then what good is all your activity? So when I look through what is happening now, what I see is we're targeting a lot of activities, which is easy as a non-educator to say, okay, I'm pushing that over to the professionals. But the reality is the society wants our kids to be better prepared. Let me give you a little data point. I'll give you two very quickly, ma'am. One, the U.S. education was #1 after World War II. We're like 27th now. Yeah. And that's because we become too weak, too ready to mollify, lack of drive, lack of discipline. And you're right, Colonel. We do have to address the family. And I've been saying that birth to 5. If we have a hard, immutable metric, that galvanizes the whole organization because every single person will be thinking, how in the heck do I help reach this target? And what I also have seen work is you raise your targets, but you know what? If you're under my umbrella, no one's going to pay you better than I am. No one's going to work harder for you than I am. So you're going to have people coming to us saying, yes, I don't want to work at the other 72 districts in South Carolina, but doggone it, I want to come here to Beaufort County because you folks are doing some amazing things. I just see this is more of the decline of American society where we give participation trophies. And I want to see us having some rock hard targets that deal directly with what the public is going to be asking us about. And then I think we will see some amazing things. I'm not casting any aspersions to the leadership, to the people, none of that. I'm just saying before they come to us and say, what the heck have you been doing? We go to them and say, hey, let me tell you, we've strengthened our empirical targets, the results, the outcome. And, you know, we hear you. The other thing is, I'll share this anecdotally. So one of the electrical companies sends out a magazine. And it's very important. You being the nerd that I am, I read things like this. And they gave away $40,000. They gave it to 10 schools in about 3 counties. Anybody want to venture a guess what the number one school was? Receiving 13 of those awards? Royal Live Oaks Charter School in Hardin. We have what, 21,500 students. Why did we only get five? So how is it we have so much talent and they are able to be pinpointed? That's all I'm raising for my esteemed colleagues here. So I think it's in Royal Live Oaks, 13. I mean, that's a lot. You had Thomas Hayward. Number one in average per award was St. Gregory the Great. And we have to compete against them. If we don't get competitive with them, there won't be a real viable public school district because it'll continue to grow and people are going to continue to say, I'm going to send my kid there. And people say, well, you know, state doesn't currently provide for that. If 2/3 of the population decides anything in a democracy for long enough, that becomes law. So they will change. So that's why I hear everybody comments, really appreciate them, but that's what I'm hearing concerned about.
Victor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My esteemed colleague across the aisle over there, when he says things like that, it resonates with me because all throughout my previous career, all I heard was results don't equal, or effort does not equal results. When I look at the instructional leadership category, to me that category is all about creating an environment. Just to read some of these, performance evaluation system has been established. Okay, it has. Does our car have tires? Yes, it does. Are they good tires? I don't know. Principles are provided to find a tire. Okay, we have windshield wipers. Are they good windshield wipers? We don't know. So that's what I'm saying. The instructional leadership category says, do we have all these things in place? Yes. To what degree do we have these things in place? But it doesn't say what are the results of all these things. And I think that's where the student achievement category defines what those results are. I would like to see a higher percentage on the student achievement. Thank you.
So let's, Dr. Rodriguez, would you like to weigh in?
Dr. Guads, I think over time I have shared with the board the concerns that I have with respect to the current system, the current evaluation piece, and the limitations in terms of the overall state evaluation system for everybody in the system. You know, one of the things I've learned over time is that alignment is important to get all wheels running and headed in the same direction. And so the issue of alignment comes into play when we talk about this. And quite frankly, there's an inability to do anything about it. So it's not that I wouldn't want to, it's that the very reporting timeline for the state of South Carolina prohibits the ability to align the entire system around that kind of a metric. Mainly because the results come out in October, September or October. Evaluations are due June 30th. So, I mean, I think I've shared over time the concerns that I have with it. Regardless of whatever you decide, I'm always going to give my 100% effort towards student achievement. What I've always done. It's what I'll always be about. But in essence, there are issues with the system and the alignment of that with evaluations for everybody in the system. So that's really all I have to say with respect to this piece. So
Thank you. Mr. Dallas.
Yeah, one of the things I think is the superintendent is speaking about alignment. I think that's really important too. And I think I have posed a question: is there anything that prohibits or precludes the superintendent from assigning scorecards throughout the organization? And I think Dr. Rodriguez, when you and I last spoke, I think you did not have an affirmative answer to that. Is that correct?
I don't know if there's anything that prohibits. One thing I can tell you, for example, you're going to create circumstances within the organization. We're talking about SC Ready, and we're talking about the other state assessments. Not every educator or every instructor in the system teaches a course where SC Ready or state assessment are what's utilized. I'll give you an example. K-2. You have social studies at certain grade levels. You have science at certain grade levels. You have junior and senior level teachers at high schools. So there will be those types of differences as part of that. Physical education teachers, fine arts teachers, as examples of some of those issues. My understanding is that the state has the evaluation policy for educators. In other words, they determine what we use for the evaluation, and that student achievement as a metric like that is not part of it.
Ms. Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Listening to Mr. Dallas and Mr. Nay, I understand where you're coming from. I understand. However, when you're talking about closing the achievement gap, I think we need to understand we're not just talking about taking an apple off the tree, you know, then slicing. You have different components. You have SPED, you have the Black, you have the white, you have the Hispanic, you know, those gaps in education is what they're talking about. There are a lot of variables in closing the achievement gap, which is why we can't close it. It's like if you wanted Colonel Geyer to move over and sit next to you, close that gap between y'all, he could do that. But this table, all of us can't be on the same side with you and close the gap. There are different variables to it, you know. He might like sitting over here. You know, I may not want to move. So when you look at the educational pieces of it, you're talking about children. You're testing children. And on any certain day, they either give you their all or they sleep to the test. You know, it just depends on how they're feeling. And we have teachers who give their all. And they will teach. then you have some teachers, no matter how hard they teach, that particular class may not score well. So when you put all of that together, you get those points. 1.2. We take a 2 points. We celebrate that because we made some improvements. I think that's what you have to understand is that Dr. Rodriguez can't close this gap. It's going to take the village because when the kids go home, as my colleague says that every time, who is working with them to continue that lesson, to continue learning? We wait until they come back the next day, and our teachers continue to teach. Our kids continue to learn. And while I don't have a problem with dropping the numerical value on the achievement gap, and that's because I know that our teachers and our principals and our leadership is doing everything that they can. But this is nationwide. Closer, their gaps might be close, but we have to look at every variable that there is. Also, when you're speaking about what you want to see, the information is here. What are we telling our constituents about the process, about the SC ready, the EOCs? We're testing our children all the time. Our teachers are stopping what they do monthly to give out tests so that these results come back. They may not get Dr. Rodriguez graded on, but he gets to know that we do better. I think we have to look at this evaluation the way that it should. How does this affect Dr. or any two? What is the effective? What does that even mean? You know, if he's effective or not. You know, but I think our terminology and our point system, while I'm not happy with the 75%, they know that. But I think it is a way to measure. Can you hear me?
Oh, much better.
That's much better. Okay, I
Yeah.
forgot to talk low when I want to, right? But anyway, I'm just saying, this is a good point. A lot of good information from my colleagues, for Dr. Rodriguez and for this results group. But I think what we're looking for, as much as we can, to give him an instrument that is not only fair to him, but also one that our community can understand and live with, as to what our superintendent is being evaluated on. And we don't lose any weights on decreasing the points in the gap. We don't. But where we gain is in instructional leadership and making sure that our children are successful, and give him what he needs to tell us what it is that he's going to do to make sure that those things are going to happen. He is not going to close the gap by 90%, even if he stayed here 90 years. Seriously, we'll take a point a year, 2 points a year, because we're depending on children. And that will turn just like everything else does, but it takes time. So if you would be, I think, a little bit more patient with our superintendent and closing this gap, and his leaders, and finding ways to do it as we look across the nation at what they're doing to do it, then we'll do it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yep. Well, Colonel Guyer is waiting. Then Mr. Campbell, then Mr. Smith.
I'm a linear thinker. I admit that. It seems to me that if I was king, and I'm not, I would say to the principals, every principal in every school, tell me what in the next year you're going to improve your scores by. Give me a percent. Give me points. Every school. And I would take that as the superintendent. I would say, okay, I think that's reasonable, or explain to me why you think you can only achieve that. And if I agree, then that's your goal. And that's what I'm going to evaluate you on. And then the superintendent comes together and he amalgamates all that data from his 33 schools. And he comes to the board and says, based on what my principals tell me, this is what I feel I can achieve in the next year. Now, when I look at this, teacher measurable components of evaluation, regression is still not acceptable. No progress still is not acceptable. The reasonable or the reasonable with noted exceptions and then just plain reasonable, it should be some number, and the superintendent would come to the board and said, this is what I expect to achieve. And then we say, okay, we'll hold you to that. And that's what you will be evaluated on. I also agree that it should be more than 10%. But is he always going to make it? No. But we have to set the bar. And if we don't set the bar, we will never make it. I guarantee it. And then I want to reward those principals that go over the bar. Ones that meet the bar, thank you. You did what you said you were going to do. Good job. But those that go above and beyond, okay, what have you done? How have you achieved that? And I fully agree with what has been said about the state standards and the state data. It's English and math, folks. Well, there's more that we have to be involved with. And so I agree with Ingrid and with you, Chloe, that we can't just use that state data because we have to take into consideration the arts. We got to take into consideration that whole child. So, I don't like using just the state data as what we're going to accomplish. Let us tell ourselves what we're going to accomplish. And let the superintendent then go out and say, okay, folks, we got a mark on the wall and get to work.
Right next is Earl Campbell.
Dr. Truesdale, what she did at the Whale Branch Middle School and elementary, she went and talked to Mr. Doggett and Mona Lisa Dixon. And she says, you tell me, what can you achieve in 2 years? And they told her, and they did it. In fact, Whale Branch Middle School was the best middle school in this county at that time. As far as the instrument we have, you know how many instruments we have used in years? And you will never get one that everybody's gonna like. As far as students, you have students in this county have to go home to parents that are on drugs, alcohol, they be abused. Very hard. And like Mr. Dallas said about the school in Hardyville, the reason why they get that $13,000 is because they have good teachers and parents. All the parents are involved, not just some, all the parents are involved. And you have to look at that school. That school hasn't been in existence but a few years. As far as the state is going to have to change the way they do things. Every 2 or 3 years, they change and come up with something different. And like Dallas said, from what, 3 to 5, 8 to birth to 5. That's the only way you're going to see achievement gap close. because it will not close by policy the district put, policy the state put in. It won't happen. And tell the legislators up in Columbia change their attitude when it comes to pre-K and kindergarten. The reason they do that is because some of them have daycare centers. Some of their friends or family have daycare centers. So ain't nothing going to change. Let's face it. When Mr. Gates started kindergarten in this county, we was the first school district that had it. And he got a lot of flack from folks. You don't need to call it daycare centers. All the children in this county can't afford to go to those daycare centers. You have Head Start. And they have a requirement. If you make too much money, your child can't go there either. Unless the state goes to universal education for pre-K, nothing is going to change. You sure you get a few achievements, but it's not going to get to where it should be. And like I said, I think it was our last work session. The foundation, our education foundation, not only here but in the United States. That's the reason why, since World War II, Japan, Europe, Korea, and all the rest of this thing are outperforming us because they have a foundation. We don't. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
And in terms of this conversation, and in terms of the educational gap, I definitely appreciated how I definitely agree with Mr. Dallas and Mr. Day, and I thank Mrs. Gordon for how elegant she spoke about the achievement gap. But I strongly disagree, coming from the school where we were frowned upon and looked at as though we could not change the achievement gap. And I watched a principal, not a superintendent, right here in this district, change the achievement gap. So I kind of feel that we're kind of smothering the baby here. We have to, I believe we have to hold a standard and set a bold standard here. Like what I saw my principal did. A lot of people doubted our school. She held a bold standard publicly, consistently, and told people that we were going to be number one in terms of the educational process, and that we were going to learn, and that we were going to be able to compete with anyone across this country. And when I look back to my classmates and my schoolmates and where they are right now today, from the people who were in that era at that school at that time, and their success level, it still exists, and you still can see them. So when we say that the achievement gap can't be closed, I find it real hard to swallow, because that's the case. And if the achievement gap can't be closed, then why are we here? We bring the superintendent here to work on the achievement gap and close it as much as possible. And when we talk about South Carolina is one. I'm not a person who I understand that we are in South Carolina. I do understand that. But South Carolina, in terms of education, is one of the worst places in America in terms of education. We're at the bottom. So in order to compete with the best, I mean, in order to compare with the best, you have to compete with the best. I look at competing out of different places, out of different states beyond South Carolina in terms of measurable, because this tool that we have right here, when we talk about South Carolina, this tool didn't come out of South Carolina. So when we're talking about where we're going and what goals that we're setting, the tool that we use didn't come out of South Carolina. So why? So in terms of saying that South Carolina and what we have and the resources are basically is not helping us get towards the achievement gap, I think is not healthy. But what I will say in conclusion is that we have to remember that it's our job to set bold goals, and it's up to the superintendent to even be able to make those goals. And yes, we can reset realistic, measurable goals. But if we're setting goals that he can say, oh yeah, that he can agree to, then we're just kind of agreeing with what he deemed to say. This is what I'll do. Sometimes, as a board, we in leadership, you have to give that person a push that's working for you. Sometimes they can say, "Well, I think it was I forgot what movie it was. It was a movie when." I think it was I forgot the name of the movie, but basically the synopsis was this: the boy told the coach it was a football movie, and he told the coach, "I can't go no more." He put another kid on the kid's back, and he told him to close his eye. I think he blindfolded him, and he told him to keep going, keep going, keep going. Before he realized it, he went from one side of the football field to the other side of the football field. When he told him to open his eyes, or when he basically took the blindfold off, when he realized that he actually took a kid on his back and ran to the other side and crossed to the other side of the football field, something he said he couldn't do, he did it. And I think that's more in line of when we talk about this achievement gap is what has to be done, because it can't places like Florida and different other places where we went to conferences, they're doing it. I'm looking and I've researched it. There are counties that are closing their achievement gap. So you want to tell me that other counties across the state of South Carolina, across the country, can close the achievement gap, but we here in Beaufort County, one of the most richest counties in the state, we can't close the achievement gap, and we have the financial backing of this institution, and we can't do that. That to me, that's just not that makes me wonder that. I mean, much faith do we really have, because I believe that the achievement gap can be pushed towards being closed, because you look, for instance, right there at the school down Broad River, those scores. And I'm not saying that we're going to close it all overnight, because achievement gap didn't happen overnight, but over a period of time it can be done. And I just think I decree and declare that that can't live among our conversation about we can't do that, because we have to believe, and I trust God. I end with that.
So everyone's had a chance to speak, and some people multiple times. Obviously, since we've had multiple meetings about this instrument, and the committee has met multiple times over many years, it's not a simple fix. It's not a simple problem. And it's evident by what everybody said here. Everybody has had very good points. So listening, it seems to me that the board's will is likely, and I'm just saying this, likely not to accept the percentages that came forward from the results committee. So does anybody want to make an amended motion does somebody want to make a motion to just keep the percentages the way they are? And that would be 45% on the professional practice component, 25% on the achievement, and I think it would be, I have to get to 55%. So it would be 15% on the teacher recruitment and retention, and 15% on the financial oversight. So those would be the same percentages as last year. Is that the board's will? And if it is, could somebody make an amended motion with that? Could be amended.
Oh, I thought there was another motion coming forward too as well.
We've got one. The first motion is on the floor. That's what we're talking about.
So we would need to.
Mr. Dallas.
I'm new at this part, so.
Okay.
I would like to make an amended motion that the board approve the retention of the metrics as they were last year. And I
Second,
think that would give us time to do further.
second.
Okay. So exactly. So now that's the motion that's on the floor now is the amendment to just keep the percentages the way they were for the evaluation we just completed.
Right.
And is everybody clear about those, or should we repeat them, or everybody got it? Got it. Okay. Do you want to comment further, Ingrid?
No, but I'm not a big fan of making a prediction about the outcome of a motion before a vote, because I think, I won't support the amendment. I think that, we brought forward a lot of good points. We had a debate about it. I think we should have voted it, but if the board wants to keep the previous ones, then that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
So in terms with, so basically, this new motion will say that basically we will keep this for how long? Are we going to revisit this conversation again soon, or is this what he's going to be by, or is this what he's going to be measured by automatically for next year?
Well, it's for the current year that's already in progress. It's for 2023, 2024 school year. So it's already more than a quarter over. That's all we're talking about tonight. Mr. Dallas.
Yeah, and I think that sort of synchronizes with the need for a very rigorous strategic review, because birth to 5 is something that strategically we could be first out of the blocks. I've heard Colonel Guy talk about that, Mr. Campbell, others, Mr. Ney and others. And I think that gives us holding period time to actually put some real deep review and analysis on the metrics, and looking at what else do we need to do? Because you're right, we are as a school district are going to have to penetrate and swim up the river of life closer to birth to actually solve the societal problems. Because as you see with the balkanization of American society, it's not going to happen unless an institution like public education takes that on. That's the only way you're going to solve it long term.
All right, Mr. Smith. So you're going to talk now still about the motion on the table
Yeah,
and the
right.
amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. Yeah. I do have some regards in terms of supporting this amendment, this amendment, because I do think that there's more in terms of achievement gap that needs to be addressed in this. That is in this tool. So I do have some concerns about that. And I mean, and the current tool that we use, I do see some areas in here that are seriously flawed that needs to be weighted on this coming year and not the following year. And I don't think for results and for the where this district is at right now, continue to move, I don't think that we can continue operating under this instrument if we want to see success. We have to set bold goals, and I don't think this instrument allows us to do that. So I can't support that.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're voting on the amended motion, and that was made by Mr. Dallas and second by Mr. Campbell. And that's exactly correct. Yeah. All right. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5. And Ingrid?
Nay.
And I'm going to say aye because I want to support what the board majority wants. I really am. I really think either would be fine, and so I want to go with the majority. And Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with nay. I'm
Okay.
gonna go with nay.
All right. So it carries 6-2. Yeah. All right. So now Ingrid, you can come back to your second. And so, the original motion with the altered percentages therefore does not need to be voted on. This would replace that. The substitute, I guess you'd really say, a motion. So now we'll come back, Ingrid, to your the second motion that's coming out of your committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, Robin, you want to pull it up?
I'll read it off the agenda. It says motion to recommend to the full board vacating the current effectiveness scale rating for teacher recruitment and retention in order to obtain further information.
Yeah, so that is basically what one of the challenges was on the this year's evaluation, was that we had some older numbers in there under teacher recruitment and retention matrix. And the one in particular that was in order to get a score of highly effective, Dr. Rodriguez would have to reduce the teacher vacancy rate by 10%. And if you'd read the materials I sent, you'll see that would be substantially better than the rest of South Carolina. The rest of South Carolina, as was pointed out in these numbers, is experiencing a rather dramatic issue with teacher retention. So what we decided to do was to remove those standards and let the next results committee figure out how they want to handle that metric. Now, what is the weighting going to be for the teacher recruitment, Robin, from the last one, 15%?
Correct.
Yeah, so it'll have a bigger impact. And again, it's because the task force is coming out with a major alignment process where it's going to be looking at all looking at systemic problems statewide that is hampering teacher recruitment, not least of which is the SC Ready and school report cards. But once that alignment's complete, hopefully then the results committee can come up with a more rational, localized, and realistic expectation for teacher recruitment and retention, find a different metric that doesn't set up the superintendent for failure, since as you see in those other materials, the vacancy rate is a real issue statewide.
All right. You have a second? Okay.
Who? No, for this second.
No, the second motion.
Second motion.
So,
Well,
I
this-
second the motion for conversation.
so Ingrid made the motion and Mr. Smith seconded it. Any further discussion?
I just want to say this is that the state is talking about they're going to come down with a new study about teachers retention and recruiting. Many of the teachers that are leaving school because education has become politicized. I've talked to a lot of teachers right here in this county and in other counties. There's too much politics in education, and that's the reason why they are leaving. Some of them, and then some of them are leaving because their husband or spouse has got a job in someplace else, especially like the military. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Dallas.
Yes, I was sort of under the impression that the motion that just passed basically made this one obsolete.
No,
It did
it made the original motion obsolete because the original motion was different percentages
Okay.
on the instrument. And so we ultimately decided the board's will was to not change those percentages at all from what the 2022, 2023 instrument we just used.
I'm with you. Thank you. Thank you for that
Sure.
clarification. Madam.
Madam Chair.
Hold on a second, Ingrid. Let Mr. Dallas finish.
The other thing, there are some other metrics, I think, in terms of research, not now, but research. Okay. I just like to mention scholarships received, apprenticeships received, internships that are received by graduates, jobs secured, college or CTE emissions, state scores. I think those are things that if we use those as metrics, then the public can relate to those. So that would be something I would suggest. I just want to share that.
Okay. All right, Ms. Boatwright.
Oh, I was just clarifying on this motion. Basically, we would just say, because this was something that came up in multiple conversations for the current evaluation that we just completed for the last year, not the current evaluation, but the one we just finished for the 2022-2023 school year. The feedback was because we adjusted the academic achievement metrics and we adjusted the financial metrics based on conversations we had in 2022. This one we did not adjust, and I heard from several board members and in committee meetings that this one should have been adjusted, because when it was set up, I think even Colonel Geyer mentioned pre-COVID, these numbers were not necessarily meant to be like the permanent end-all be-all numbers. So this, to Mr. Dallas's point, is not saying here's what we think they should be, because I feel like at this point the ad hoc results committee has pretty much completed what it was assigned to do. It's vacating them and saying the next results committee can look at. I think it would be great to look at anything other than these standardized test scores as a way of evaluating the health of a school or teacher recruitment and retention. So that's why this is a specific carved out second amendment or second motion. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Smith?
And in terms of teachers recruiting and teacher retention, I think that this does have a large part to do with the culture and the climate. And I do, and if my memory serves me correct, the culture and the climate is separate from this right here. Isn't it somewhere in this tool where culture and climate is asked upon?
Well, you'd have to go back through everything, but there's community relations, staff relations, surveys are done throughout the year, those kind of things.
Well, right. Under community relations,
Right.
but also with just saying that that I don't think that it's just teachers are quitting just because of being politicized. I think also that unfortunately, I think that we have to have a standard, regardless of wherever teachers are leaving. We have to have some type of measurable standard of keeping teachers and how that's tracked along the way. Because, for instance, someone could say, "Well, there's you can't get better yet soda. You might can't get water within a certain amount of within a certain amount of radius, but you can sure bet your bottom dollar you can get that Coca-Cola within a certain mile or radius." So we have to figure out a way how we begin to market and package and produce those Coca-Cola products, and how we hold the superintendent and staff accountable for that. I mean, I understand that things are rough, things are tough, but it still have to be measurable, and once again, have to be a bold goal upon what we see that's able to happen, and in terms of teacher retention and climate. Because I almost felt that there was one question, but there was not enough to understand why we lose teachers from time to time, and why the disconnect. Because sometimes we say, well, we have some military teachers, or we say we have some teachers leaving because of that. But as a board, what do we actually get that gives us that information to make it concrete and to be able to say, yes, based upon this number that we were given, that's accurate? Because I have teachers that tell me different things all the time. And so I think that some of it does have to do with culture, with some of it is culture and climate, and some of it are other things. All of it is not students. So I just think that at some point in time, we do have to figure a way out how we can resolve some of these issues, because that also does affect the achievement gap. That's all I'll say with that.
Victor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So words mean things, and I'm trying to understand the definition of this. Vacating the current effectiveness scale rate. Does that mean we are removing the category from the grading criteria?
No, it would mean that we're removing for example, in the teacher recruitment and retention, the descriptors that are there don't seem to really be good measurements or even achievable by the superintendent. It's not saying that we're going to not have descriptors there, but it's become clear just from this last evaluation that, I mean, he couldn't possibly earn a 4 in the reducing reducing teacher vacancies by greater than 10% is unattainable. So the motion to me means that we're going to let the next results committee come up with other descriptors, that these aren't really in that section, don't seem to really apply well.
Okay, so
Is that right, Ingrid?
Yeah, and we were kind of, yeah, exactly. So basically, we're saying these
Right.
ones we don't think are realistic or reasonable, and we don't
Yeah.
have new ones to propose. So we're hoping that, the next results committee can kind of look into that.
okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay.
So like somewhere we're just kicking the can down the road as far as the determining what the scale rating is going to be.
Right.
Okay.
And part of that is because I think there needs to be more information to make that decision about what the wording should be there.
Okay, and then I'm not entirely sure if this question is germane to the motion at hand, and I apologize if it's not. But pardon my ignorance and my freshman question here. Why do we have to do the results and have it finished before the state school board report cards come out? Why can we not wait until the report card comes out before we do the superintendent's evaluation?
Well, the timing is such that so he's evaluated on the year that ends in July. Okay. But we don't get the test scores from the state until a few months later, i.e. like October, typically by the time they're released to the public. And then also his employment contract requires that we do an annual evaluation. So it has been done in October after just immediately after the scores come out. It's really a timing issue, but I don't know how we would change that, because I don't think we'd say the springtime is a good time to do an evaluation on something that happened a year ago, because the whole purpose of the evaluation is try to take it and use the findings in the evaluation to make the system improve going forward. So you don't want to do it too much after the fact.
I
Is that what
understand.
you're thinking?
Yes, to an extent. But I mean, if we're dependent upon the data and we don't have the data, then why can't we just wait to do the evaluation until we have the data?
What if we did have the data?
Oh, I thought we didn't. I thought that's what this was all about. Dr. Rick, okay, maybe I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
May I say
Yeah.
something?
Sure.
Mr.
And then-
Ney, what I was saying is, if you want to align the evaluation system, the teacher, the school administrator, and the superintendent, right, with student achievement, the teacher and the school administrator evaluation must be turned in and completed by June 30th. The data doesn't come in until October. It's not a problem for mine, because you can wait until October 31st for mine, but
Gotcha.
for my evaluation, but for teachers and for school administrators, the state asked for it by June 30th.
Thank you. That sheds a lot of light on it. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
I was
Earl.
just going to say that every year the state has been late giving us the data, so it's not our problem. School get out in June, and they cannot. Something is wrong with the state if they cannot get that information to us until October. That's the way the problem lies. Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to vote?
Yeah. To go back to what Mr. Ney was saying, and in terms of this information of reducing of teacher vacancies, and this information right here, right? So we do get this information right here, right? Correct. So what differently are we trying to do in terms of with the tool? Because if we're saying that this is what we're evaluating the superintendent off of, based off of these two sections, then what's the real question? Because it's either either the vacancies are being reduced or they're not, or even the number of substitutions, the number of subs are being less or not. I mean, I'm kind of
So I think the problem right now is that those percentages may not be accurate ones to evaluate him on.
based off of what is my question? My question would be then
Because
based off
how
of
can
what?
you possibly reduce teacher vacancies by 10%? That would be monumental. I don't think anybody probably in the United States has done that. So I think what needs to be done is HR would likely have to give, a little synopsis of, new hiring, retirees, to how many vacancies, and we hear that, but we don't hear it all at once. So to me, it didn't seem very fair to him that we're telling him in order to get highly effective 4 points, i.e. like an A, you have to reduce vacancies by greater than 10%, but he can't even do it. I mean, it would be impossible. So so the next results committee has to say, what's a better descriptor here? Maybe it's to reduce, you noticed on the ineffective end, it's only got a 5%. So maybe highly effective should be vacancies decreased by 5%. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I have no idea, but we need more information to determine what is that scale there, that's fair. What's fair to him, and also, best for our students.
And I hear what you're saying, but once again, I have to push back just because of the fact that so then the question becomes to the committee who put this tool together. When y'all made this tool, what was the thinking that went into it? Because if it was good then why is it not good now? I mean, what's the I mean because if this was put in to make this happen, then what's the difference, and what was the thought process of putting this in there?
Well, I can say that too. Oh, well, I can just say in like one sentence is that this tool was constructed prior to the pandemic. The pandemic has totally changed learning, and there's been such a learning loss due to the pandemic, huge learning loss. So maybe Dick wants to elaborate.
I helped put this together
Right.
back in 2019, and it was based on another school up north. And by that time, nationally, these were the kind of things, the percentages that were happening. And that, as the chair just mentioned, that all went out the window. And all enrollment in education and sustainment for teachers across the nation just fell off a cliff. And so we have to adjust it because we based it on a previous environment that isn't here anymore.
I mean, I hear that, and so then my other question is, now as the board, we've given out the superintendent and staff, him and his staff came to us and said, in order to make this happen, we needed to be able to pay teachers this in terms of getting them to miss certain days. We've given them bonuses. So what they've told us that they need to make this happen as a board, we have granted them their wishes. And so I'm in term now to, on the other side of protecting my taxpayers' money, I'm looking for results now, because the superintendent and staff came to us and said they needed a couple things to make some of this happen, in terms of bonuses, in terms of how they get paid for losing days, and things of that nature. So as the board, once again, we can't just get a blind side to, because the board, we have made some sacrifices, said that, hey, to give it, to make it more realistically and make these things happen, we've put some skin in the game, and we can't forget about the skin that we put in the game, because the same way we're holding them accountable to make this happen, the taxpayers are going to hold us accountable too. So I once again, my question is still, in terms of, so what do we do about what we've put, what the skin that we put in the game to make this happen? I mean, where those results at? Because that was the total purpose of the board voting to do what we did to make this happen. Maybe I'm a little naive, but I mean, I really I want to. I don't want to make it seem like I'm not supporting our teachers and our superintendent and our staff, but there's just a standard that we must have a bold standard to get results. We have to have a driving force to get results. And as a board, we said that we would do these things so that we could get these results. And now we're saying that we're going to change the results. So the question is, where is the standard? Where are we really driving our standard to? I'm done.
All right, Victor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to call the vote.
All right. Everybody ready? Okay. All those in favor of, let me just quickly read it again. This motion is to recommend to the full board, okay, vacating the current effectiveness scale rating for teacher recruitment and retention in order to obtain further information. So if you vote yes, you're saying we're going to vacate it and get different information, in the committee and that starts in January. We'll work on that. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Ingrid? I think she's moved out there. Any nays? Okay.
Mrs. Smith is nay.
Okay. So the motion carries 6-1-0. All right. No further business on tonight's agenda. So thank you for your input and for coming tonight and attending. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, long distance there. And we'll adjourn by unanimous consent. All in favor? Aye.